Welcome to Soulful Practices podcast. I'm your host, Michelle Holling Brooks, and over the past 20 years, I have been on a journey of healing and awakening. I'm also a coach and practitioner for clients on their journey of unbridling their true self. The number one question I'm asked is, what meditation or practice will help me reach my goals? While there is no one meditation or secret mantra that will unlock our own awakening, there is a doorway that will lead us there. And that's the doorway of learning and cultivating the skills of self-reflection and contemplation. Each episode of this podcast offers you pocket teachings and practices that you can implement right away to help you courageously connect with living your authentic soul-led life. Let's dive into this week's episode. Hello, and welcome to episode 13 of Soulful Practices, and we are entering into season 2. I'm so excited, and the theme that is going to hold us throughout this season over the next 3 months or so is the theme of empowering more love and compassion in our lives so that we can courageously connect with our authentic life of who we truly be, right? And this pocket teacher that I have selected for this launch call for season 2 is by Jack Kornfield, who is best known for his teachings that are based in the more Buddhist principles and teaching and wisdom tradition. He is quoted as saying that no matter how difficult the past, you can always begin again today. Right? And so I was guided to pick this quote because it really brings us into the heart and the soul of the true empowerment that is possible when we deeply engage with our contemplative practices, when we are willing to be rooted in that practice and that devotion of self-knowledge and self-inquiry with compassion, with love, because we can be self-reflective, but if we're doing it with like a wire brush and whacking ourselves on the wrist with a ruler, we're not really inviting ourselves to get out of that fear-driven place, the spurring ourselves on, so to speak, into change and growth and expansion. We're just creating more of that same rat race of just really like driving ourselves and having our nose to the grindstone. We want our self practices to be in alignment with what is divine light and love, right? And that is self-love and compassion, while also inviting ourselves to be true about what is happening within us, what is motivating our choices, and how are we moving into motion. Those are all things that we're actually going to hit in the first 3 episodes of this season. And so true empowerment really can be held when we are devoted to these contemplative practices that truly help us awaken to the soul level truths and remember that we are never really stuck, right? And restricted to one way of being, that we are beings of co-creation. And therefore the question is not, can I learn how to manifest? Because we already are that. It's our nature. It's what we are. Instead, the question is, what and who are we creating? What and who and how are we manifesting ourselves? And this quote really reminds us that no matter what the experiences are from the past, no matter what the ripples are coming into an event, that every moment we have a chance to engage with our greatest healing superpower or our greatest growth superhuman power, which is our power of choice. The power of co-creation to begin again, like he's inviting us to in this beautiful quote, building out new thoughts, new choices, new perspectives of the way in which we see, hear, interact, and work with the world within us and around us, and ultimately freeing up that inner state of being that we have, that even amidst of hardships and heartbreaks and experiences of those in the past, what I kind of talked about in episodes 11 and 12, if you haven't seen those ones, that even when we have those things, we can choose at any moment how we want to engage, right? And that's what this quote is rooting us into so that we can really, truly be able to engage and empower more love, compassion, and ultimately freedom and wholeness in our life. And that's what we're working on this season, and really kind of in everything that I do out here at Unbridled Change, including the Soulful Practice podcast. You know, one of the things that when I read this quote to people or I share this quote with people, they kind of go, well, Michelle, I get that he's given a nod to the past pains and troubles and difficulties as he says it, but really that has impacted me and that is informing how I'm showing up. And that is having a moment, so to speak, in what I feel is possible about beginning again. And I say, absolutely. 100%. Over the last 20 years of being in practice of the healing and spiritual arts, from the equine partnered psychotherapy and coaching side to the more office oriented and the spiritual coaching, the hundreds of clients that I've worked with, they have endured and suffered great traumas, right? And diseases and chronic diseases, acute diseases, like they've been through it. And heck, I am one of those people too. I have been and journeyed through these waters of suffering and past pains and traumas and betrayals and disease. That's been kind of a lot of what I've swam through in my life. And I also recognize and I honor that it truly does create this ocean of difficulties that can separate us from believing that we can begin again. Like I'm not just rose-colored glasses and giving you a little motto that's like, oh, just wake up each day and call it a wonderful day and out you go. I want to be sensitive to, and I want to attend to the fact that when we have those experiences, they do create a body of water, so to speak. I see it like a vision of like this ocean, that there's that island of our true self, right? That we're trying to connect back to, and we feel cut off from it. We feel that somehow we just can't get ourselves to that place to snap our fingers and say, sure, that's what I want to do. And even if we do believe we can get back there and connect into our true self, we get stuck on a very shadowy saboteur question that honestly makes sense, because if you haven't ever done it and you don't feel that it's that connected to you and you don't feel it's safe and secure, the natural next question is, okay, well, I don't know how to do that, right? And we can get really bogged down right there in this, I don't know how to begin again. Because the difficulties do dissolve that supportive and healthy connections that we have to our own self, to our wise one self inside, like I like to call it, and team there, that positive self-talk that's like coming through and helping us meet each choice and see a bigger perspective of what's happening behind the scenes in our system, so that we can tend to the parts of us that are scared and nurture the parts of us that are ready to move, right? We can do both with that. And also, one of the other things that happens is that we get disconnected from our life. So we don't even see the choices that are available to in our life. Like I had one of my clients say to me one time, she was like, I asked her a question and she's like, Michelle, I don't even understand your question. And then I was like, well, here's a couple options. And I gave her like, hey, you could call a friend, you could do this, you could do that. And it was like I had, the little emoji with the blown off head, because while those seem like simple choices, when you are used to saying, okay, it's just me and I have to figure out how to beg, borrow, and steer and survive, the idea of reaching for help and connecting into our life and letting our life support us and the people that are in it, the other beings, that's tricky territory, and even doesn't even pop up with that idea of how to ask for help, who to ask for help, what to ask for help with. And when you do get help, how not to just pass over the steering wheel, but like get in there with, how would you like that help? How would you like someone to support you? Where do you want to hold up a hand and say, okay, thanks, I got it, I'm taking it from here, And so all of these choices are a part of that begin again, that trauma, disease, chronic illness, having to work in isolation definitely do step us out from. And ultimately, it really separates us from believing that that connection is also there to our soul and to the divine, whatever word you like to put with that. I use the word divine, so that's the word you will hear me use in Soulful Practices and other stuff. But that idea that there's something, an intelligence, a being that cares about you as an individual and the whole, both are true, right? And it's there and available to you for support and insights, and that is available to you through your heart and your soul. So yet, while it feels that there's this ocean that separates us, dissolves us, cuts us off from that support, both internally, externally, and then out to that divine nature, that connection never is truly lost. Our inner power as that creator being is always present, and it's just not had a chance to be nurtured, or it's been so thin and stretched, or like someone came and like blew up the bridge to it, that we've forgotten how to use that pathway. And we've replaced that pathway with what are called false selves, right? These different masks that we wear. And the masks in Old Greek is called personas. And so if you're in the mental health world or the spiritual world or the limiting belief world, any one of those coaching worlds, you might have heard this thing of like personas. And that's literally like the Old Greek masks that they used to wear is what those were called. And they were for actors. They put it on and it projected out into the world a certain way of being that wasn't who that person really was. It was the part that they were playing. And so we get very used to believing that that version of ourselves is actually who we are. And the healing journey, the spiritual journey, the self-empowerment and growth journey, any of those, no matter which doorway you're coming through, they all are there to help us take down that mask, let go of those false selves, and begin again. Come back closer to who we are and let it start to flourish, nourish itself, and start to grow. So while I know that this quote makes it sound like a simple snap of the finger and poof, there's my new life as soon as I decide I just want to begin again, I get that. And I get that that's not actually what he's inviting us into. He's bringing us into the awareness that we can do that. And that part of us is innate in every single one of us, and therefore it's there. Now, how buried it is and how big that ocean is, every single one of us has something different, but it's there in some way, shape, form, or fashion. So while yes, the first step is to set that intention, I choose to begin again. I choose to say that this is possible. We also need to remember that change is not presto changeo, right? It happens for you that way. If that happens and you like have this aha epiphany, chances are if I ask you to really slow down, you'll realize that earth was flat, earth is round moment for you where it did change on a dime actually had a pretty big runway leading up to it. You just might not have seen it. And that's because change is incremental, right? Like it's something that happens with one choice after one choice after one choice. And yes, sometimes transformation is thrust into our field. Change or die, so to speak. And that happens a lot in chronic illness or acute illnesses, right? Like it comes in and it's like, hey, we need to change some stuff up. We need to look at some stuff and we are going to be asked to work with new changes. But the mindset, the way that we bring our body into movement with that change, that is what has all the power in the world. And that's what creates new rhythms, new ways of being. And that happens one choice at a time until we reach that enough momentum and that tipping point. I call it just 51%. And then now that becomes our new normal and our new habit of way of being, right? So that power of creation and manifestation that everyone loves to talk about in the spiritual world, it lies within you already. It's already present. And it's the steps that we take in, yes, setting that declaration, shooting that rocket of desire out there into the world, as Esther Hicks talks about, like allowing ourselves to declare that intention to create a new change, growth, attunement with being more in alignment with who we want to be now and in the future versus who we were in the past, right? And this change is often incremental and it's also wiggly wonkily hot mess. It's not an easy point A to point B thing, right? It's something that's much more difficult than that. Well, I don't want to put the word difficult, scratch that. Let's take that out there. It's much more of a journey than just point A and point B, right? It's swiggly, wonkily, all in between, and then you'd end up getting from point A to point B. But it is the journey in between that creates the ability to access point B, right? So hopefully now your system is saying, okay, Michelle, I'm willing to play ball with this quote. I'm willing to believe a little bit of what maybe this teacher is inviting me into. And in theory, sure, I'll agree with that we can begin again. But now I'm on the second part of what you talked about. But how? right? How do I overcome that ocean that is separating me? How do I empower myself in ways that feel grounded, rooted, and actually feel like they have true healing and lasting change and growth within them, so that I'm not stuck with these quick fixes and illusions of change. But when the dust settles with the fog of that little illusion, you're like, I still feel the exact same inside. I still feel that I'm stuck in the same choices, the same rhythms. And yeah, I can do these presto changeo things, but at the end of the day, it still feels the same. This is a great question. And I love answering this question. And this is like what I absolutely am passionate about, helping people unlock and unbridle within themselves. Hence the name Unbridled Change is my organization. Okay, so the how part, let's take a breath. How do we begin again? It's a really good question, right? Like the how part requires us to lean into understanding more about our why. What is our purpose that is driving the change? And what is the energy that we are co-creating the change and growth with? Right? This is a huge question, and it's a game changer in our system. I have this system called the Bridge of Connection, and I teach it in all of the different places that I'm at, and it's coming out. I really highlight it in my new book that's coming out. I'm super excited about that. I'll tell you more about that in a little bit. But the Bridge of Connection just basically says, hey, there's 5 pillars to really connecting and to draining this ocean that's in between us, right? And one is working on trust, being able to say what we mean and mean what we say with ourselves, right? Not outside. This is a connection to myself, this bridge back to me. And can I start to say, okay, this is my intention and this is what I am going to work for. And how am I going to work in that? Is it going to be in a respectful way? Am I going to be, kind and compassionate and fair with myself? Or am I going to like whack myself and spur myself on? If we're doing that, we're not going to really want to connect to our true self, because that's not in the avenue, that's not in the energy, right? So the how-to part is we're not going to end up in a place in connection with our true self if that's how we're spurring ourselves on. It's just like, it's, counterintuitive to the energy, the love, and the compassion that we're doing. So if we believe that we're going to say what we mean and mean what I say to ourselves, and the way in which I'm going to hold myself accountable for that is kindness, compassion, and willing to do the repair work when I find myself having a moment, I'm willing to begin again, then we are willing to make that choice to move into connection more with hearing our heart and our soul. And we're also willing to let some of that information that we're hearing coming from our soul maybe not always match what we personally want, right? Like it's willing to come in this broader picture, one that kind of says, yeah, I know this is what you really, really want. I know this is what you would prefer, but this is also what's here. And when it matches, it's just like gumdrops and roses. It's a moment, right? But we can really feel that why, that purpose is connected to our soul that truly does believe in the highest good and benefit for all. And oh, by the way, that all includes you, right? And so this is a huge question of what is it that's driving our choices of how we engage with our world at large, right? Within ourselves and outside of ourselves. Because if we're using the pain and suffering and the difficulties of the past to fuel ourselves into, I never want this, so therefore, ... I never want to feel this way again, ... And we're linking the two as using one to catapult ourselves into a new choice, then that energy of never again fear, shadow protection, or resentments or anger, that is what we're actually using to fuel us into that change, which means that's baked into the energy within what we are trying to manifest and grow. So if we have frantic energy, if we have reactive energy, if we have resentment, I'll show you, this is owed to me, those types of energies coming in to the choices and the creations that we're trying to make, it makes sense. Those are the ingredients we're putting in the cake. The cake is going to taste that way. We can't take those ingredients out. Now we can realize that we made the cake that way. And per this quote, we can say, okay, I don't want to taste that type of a cake again. Let me put that aside. And now how can I start making new choices? Right? So one of the main things that I think is missing in a lot of people's manifestations and growth goals and all these other things is to slow down and really lean into, with clarity, with discernment, with truth, of what is my why here and what is the purpose and what is coming from behind that and what are we moving for. Obviously, the ingredients that we're talking about this season is the ingredient of love and compassion. And there's one other thing that comes with beginning again. And it's hidden within this quote, and it's not really brought in forward, but I'm going to bring it forward now. And that's the grace of forgiveness. And everyone always kind of says, hold up, Michelle, right here, right? Like, what stops us 90% of the time from moving into that new beginning is that some part of us, a wounded part of us, a fearful part of us, a part that's got some beautiful justifications going on that might be really based in truth. And yeah, this is unfair. And yeah, that would be beautiful if that person could come back and say something to us that would acknowledge that hurt that was done. Or the universe would come down and be like, hey, this is why this is this and this has happened in your thing. But if we're stuck and looking for that debt, quote unquote, to be paid, we are stuck. That means we're looking for that vindication, and that's in the ingredients in our cake, right? And so one of the main ways when I start helping people kind of break down like what's happening in their world and why it still feels off and why they can't seem to close that gap fully, and they just keep finding themselves stuck in this eddy of churning and churning with resentments or fears or worries, and they can't break free, is when we slow down and really look in there, we realize that there's a part of us that's in there that's holding on to a past pain. And therefore, it's holding on to the subtly the adaptations in which we had to create to survive that past pain. So whether this again is like internally happening, maybe it's a voice that says, I'm not worthy of love. Like, wow, I just saw this one the other day with a client we were working through, and this beautiful client was like sitting there and she caught herself like halfway through. She was like, well, this is what I really want, but I'm willing to settle for this because, and I kind of smiled and I leaned in a little bit and I said, because why? And she started laughing because she was like, oh, because I don't want to jinx what I already have. I think, and she had a subtle belief system that somehow if she allowed herself to have like more enjoyment in life, to have like the from good to great in her life, that would somehow undermine what was good, and like some universal balancer would come in and swipe that away, right? And so she had a block in there of like how much joy she could actually enjoy and engage with in her life. It was super subtle, but when we slowed down in this, we were able to find that, lean into that, right? And found just like this really subtle thing of like, if I allow myself to actually feel good, that's a target on me, right? And we have these different internal belief systems that really have like, I don't deserve a sense of freedom because in the past I made this choice, yada, yada, yada. And we're holding ourselves, the imagery that I give, and hopefully this isn't too graphic for you, is we're hanging ourselves on a hook or on a cross somewhere, and we need to go take ourselves off of that. Or we realize we open up the door and we got a bunch of other people like locked in dungeons or hanging on hooks too, that we're waiting for something to be balanced, right? To be owed to us. And when we do that, we are double binding ourselves and saying that until that is fixed, we cannot move forward. We cannot begin again. And when that happens, we are condemning ourselves now, and we're condemning our future selves to be stuck, burdened with the weight of the past. Now, again, I'm not saying to make amends where we can, and absolutely that is a part of the energy. However, that's not what most of my clients are up to. Most of the time, we're really raking ourselves over coals way beyond a repair has been happened, and we're holding ourselves stuck in it as a protective mechanism to maybe prevent future pain or to never have that happen again, right? And so we need to get really real here with ourselves. We need to be willing to be a little raw with ourselves, but we're willing to do that because we know the way we're going to do that is holding ourselves with compassion, holding ourselves with that grace of understanding. And ultimately, with that love comes forgiveness. We're going to look towards ourselves with compassionate eyes. We're going to understand that our motivations at some point in our past, we're going to believe that that was the best choice we could come back with at the time for what was happening in our system, physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. And we're going to give that benefit of the doubt. But we're going to ask it, okay, now what would be a better choice? What would bring me more balance right now, right? And as we start to build these types of reflections into our practices, hence soulful practices, we can start to have conscious attention flow to really being able to see where these really savvy, hidden, past conditioned responses, past fears from the wounded parts of ourselves still coming forward, and how they are limiting our choices, restricting our choices, even like making it so we are blind to certain choices. We don't even see them. We don't even think they're possible. And then therefore we are binding ourselves up because of it, right? So once we can see it, once we set that intention that says, hey, I do want to be aware where I'm binding myself up, and then we allow that intention to guide our awareness, we can begin to really hold ourselves accountable in loving and compassionate ways with where we are truly withholding ourselves in very subtle ways to probably some big ways with choices that are just no longer in alignment with who we truly be, right? They're not matching the little voice, the little nudge that we hear coming from within our system that says, hey, Michelle, pause for a moment. Like, don't just respond to that person. Like, just pause, breathe, bring some compassion and some understanding. Now think of the part of you that's struggling and how would you want to respond? Which battery pack do we want to come from? Spurring myself on or finding a way of growth that is absolutely there and wanting to be born, but it comes from a completely different energy source within inside of you, right? How can we compassionately unbridle ourselves, like take off all these restraints that we have to hold ourselves back in? And oh, by the way, in case you don't know, I am a lover of like the horses, and I've been in the horse world since I was a little kiddo. They're a huge part of my story and healing, and they're huge companions to me. So a lot of the metaphors that I bring in have to do with horses. So I apologize if you don't know horses. You don't have to know anything about horses to work with me, but they are just a huge part of the teachers that have been in my life. So that's hence the spurs. And I don't know if you've ever seen those in like the old Westerns, like and they rake them up the side of the horse's thing, and they're trying to get the horse to go faster, right? So the horse is going, but it's not going because it has a love and compassion and a joy with the rider. It's going because it's in pain. It's going because it doesn't want more pain. It just is trying to outrun the pain and move away from that. We don't want to move into action from moving away from pain or trying to avoid pain. We want to take those little spurs off of ourselves, the whips where we're cracking ourselves, and be like, hey, how do we want to move into action? This is a preview. You're going to see that in a few episodes, and I can't wait until we get there. All right, bringing myself back to this purpose of where we're at right now in this launch call, and what we're working on, and giving you little previews of the different episodes that will be over the next few months. So as we unbridle ourselves from the different thoughts that no longer serve us, from the different choices that no longer serve us, in order to begin again, that medicine of forgiveness needs to be there with us so that we believe and accept that we are worthy of change. We are worthy of happiness. We are worthy of laughter. We are worthy of growing past our difficulties. And in doing so, that is an act of love and compassion for ourselves, for our lives, and for all the beings that are in our lives. So we think love and compassion and even forgiveness is like a passive energy. It's more of like this topic that we kind of talk about in these big esoteric terms. I see them as actions. I'm a very action-oriented person as well. And if you're new to me, then just realize that I like to say we take our meditations off the cushion. We have the still moments for that reflection, but then we need to bring that into movement with us throughout our life, right? And so I see love and compassion and forgiveness as the same thing. They're verbs. They're something that we are doing, we are engaging with. They are guiding our choices. They're baked in to the energy and the vibration that we offer ourselves and others. And self-dialogue and how we engage in that is one of the first places it starts. Because when we can give it to ourselves, it becomes second nature to empower and give it to another, right? And so as we begin to engage our self-dialogue, our practices, our thought processes, as we're sitting at the stoplight or we're walking down the street, the way in which we start to talk to ourselves starts to reattune itself into positivity, into bringing ourselves into even course correcting with acknowledgement of like, hey, we could really tweak that, but bringing that into, and I can understand where that came from. Now let's see the way that would bring us more balance, right? So our actions and our thoughts and our behaviors and just the energy of our aura starts to be in alignment with the whispers of our heart and our soul and the divine. Right? And so if you are new to me to this podcast, hello. This is my simple framework. This is what I teach in all the different pockets at different levels. And this one, it's kind of a pocket-sized version of it. But it's a powerful framework of just 3 simple steps, right? Of how to begin again. And it's based and housed in the contemplation skills of self-reflection, which equals conscious, manifestation that is really grounded in the mystical laws, right? It's grounded in the laws of creation. And that's what I share with you at the end of each episode. And that's what each episode is built around. So just real quick for in case you're new to me, and I did this with season 1, but we'll do it here in season 2, because repetition is golden. The more we fire, the more we use those neurons and those pathways, the more that we bring them in. Is step 1 of my 3-step simple framework process is set the intention. Right? People ask me, Michelle, what is your manifestation thing? How do you do all the things you do? Right? And I go, this is it. It's like really simple, rinse and repeat. You just got to do it. Right? So we're going to set that intention first. We're going to awaken up to something in our soul that goes, oh, hey, I think I want to do this differently. I think I want to begin anew, right? I want to bring more freedom into my choice. I want to feel more comfort or courage or excitement about something. And I want to go from feeling like surviving to thriving, from good to great, to awesome, to amazing, all those things. So that's number 1. We have to set our intention of what specifically that is. It's one thing to say, I want to feel amazing. And I go, okay, great. Pick one thing. Because again, I said this is based in the mystical laws of creation. So where we bring our attention will flow that puts gravity in something. And so that's our root chakra. And then it starts to open up into that cause and effect. As I now have this as my choice maker, I am now starting to unhook myself from the karmic wheel of cause and effects that just keeps trolling. And I'm starting to say, okay, this is the one I actually want to feed and work with, which means I'm going to have to make new choices, which means I'm going to have new postures, which means I'm going to have to, right? And so my cause and effect wheel starts to shift and change. And then from the second chakra, now we can move up to that third chakra, our will center. This is that law of attraction. As I'm now making new choices and I'm starting to have my focus in one place and starting to bring that in, and I'm matching all the way down to like course correcting and bringing in and seeing where I'm putting ingredients in and being like, whoops, let me pull that out and put something else in. Now we're working with the true law of manifestation instead of just the wishful thinking. And we all know the acronym that goes with wish and thinking and what happens in the other hand, and tell me which one fills up first, right? So we want to be bringing this in through rooted, grounded, beautiful energy. Our heart starts to open up with that belief system, that feeding our heart and our soul and sensing into the currents and the choices and the dialogue that matches and feeds that. We start to express that with our beautiful 5th chakra. We start to be able to talk about it, share it, live it, be it, and we can start to see it, hear it, engage. Our literal senses begin to shift to become more attuned to what we're now looking for. So instead of looking for ways in which people are going to spur me or I'm going to do that to myself, I'm starting to look at ways that I can move into motion through partnership, through love, through excitement, through joy, through curiosity, through imagination, all these other things my system begins to be in alignment with. And then I'm able to just truly free up my mind from those limiting beliefs that still might be holding on. I call these like the Uber protectors, who are a little bit like sitting back and they're watching and they're like, show me. We can do the Jerry Maguire thing. I just dated myself. Show me the money, like we can do that. And those are the parts that are sitting back. As we start to gain more momentum and we build more and more alignment within our system with this, then our mind starts to be able to see it, perceive it, and move beyond the protective mechanisms. It says, okay, it hands the baton from our mind and our ego trying to figure it out, and it passes it to our heart. And then that opens us up, beautiful whole body system, up through the crown to the soul star chakra, all the way down to our earth star chakra. And again, it just keeps expanding itself and bringing itself more in alignment with who we truly be and less alignment with the path. So this is the simple thing, right? We're going to set that intention first. Then we're going to bring that attention to be put to the different ways in which we see our actions throughout the day, our thoughts throughout the day, and pausing. Beautiful moments of pause so that we can turn towards that piece and say, okay, what's working here? What's not? What are the ways in which things may need to be tended to? Because again, we don't just go off and cut ourselves off from ourselves for giggles. There's a reason there's that ocean there. And so sometimes we need to pause and attend to ourselves, but we also at the same time have the ability to flow with the parts of ourselves then that are ready to move. We can do both at the same time. And to me, a beautiful healing practice, a soulful practice, allows both moments of stillness, unwinding, tending to ourselves, and also engagement and flow that allows us to make new choices, that moves us into committed action that goes with it, right? Because to me, the self-reflection is step one, but step two in step three, those are engagements. Those are saying, okay, now I see this. What do I want to do about it? How do I want to shift it, change it? And this beautiful quote by Jack Kornfield invites us into what you need to do is begin again, right? So we can flow past the normal blocks that are in our system and that are just cut off from the past. So we do have available to us new choices and new opportunities. And the question is, are we going to take it, or are we going to abandon them due to the first part of that quote, past difficulties? So when we engage in our contemplative practices each day in this simple formula, we can give ourselves I even like to say, yes, if you can set yourself up with a real quick looking at that intention and maybe having like a longer 15, 20-minute journaling and reflection exercise, somatic movement with it, whatever way works for you. And then throughout the week, you can just have these check-in points in the beginning of the day, maybe a middle of the day, like, hey, I found this yesterday. How am I doing with that today? And then at the end of the day, again, a short little check-in moment of bringing that in. Little by little, our mental being realizes it's not alone anymore. We are here, because when the mental being was designed to take over and just run automatically was when we did not have the capacity. We were little kiddos. We were trying to make sense of things that were too much, too soon, with too little support, and we didn't have the availability of someone there to help us sort it, make sense of it, and understand it in a way that felt empowering. And so therefore, we end up careening ourselves and separating ourselves off from our true self, because we have to adapt. So I always take our shoes off on sacred ground. And our system is beautiful sacred ground. We don't push it. We don't shove it. We don't spur it. We don't judge it. All of those things, that's the way of the past. It doesn't have love and compassion, right? So when we bring these three steps together with love and compassion and the hidden ingredient of forgiveness, then we start to really allow our mental being to soften say, oh, I don't have to be in charge anymore. I don't have to be the one working by myself as this lone wolf protector. I can pass the baton. It runs down through the throat chakra and it goes to the heart and it says, hey, heart, here, you and the soul being, you're who's in charge of this now. You're the one that's going to help guide me. And yes, my survival level parts of me are going to be taken care of too, because our soul doesn't want us getting whooped out, right? It's going to try to give us heads up and ways to work with those ripples that might come in from left field, because we're co-creators, not the creator, right? And so we do have left fielders and we do have things that are outside of our choice points. And the support that we need to work with that is there too, if we can get into this heart and the soul, right? And begin to manifest and empower our true choices and the guidance that comes with it. So in season 1, I really laid the groundwork for it. If you feel called to it, if you haven't listened to that one, feel free to go back in there and dig around and go to whichever ones are calling to you. If not, hello, welcome. This is where we're going to start from. But it's where we really laid that the foundation and that groundwork to work with Jack's quote from the place of love and compassion, right? That we aren't going to try to tell ourselves, suck it up, buttercup. If you hear that one coming in, lovingly tell it to, I see these things because I'm also trained in ACT, action, acceptance and commitment therapy, or ACT, and so I'm trained in that way of working as well. And so they have a metaphor on there of called like passengers on the bus, and that we gather all these protector parts of us, like the one that would say, suck it up, buttercup, let's get going. Somebody said that to us, somewhere we picked that up, and it's now on our bus. And so I always have this like line in the bus, that yellow line that you have to stay behind. I'm like, get behind the yellow line. I'm willing to chat with you. I'm willing to talk with you, but you're not allowed to like get so close and blended in and pushing on me energetically. I need you to step back for a second. I need you to give me a little breathing room, and then I'd be more than happy to have a chat with you about why we're bringing in that one, right? And so we're not going to say to our system, just get over it. Instead, because that's not compassionate and that's not kind, we're going to look for the yes ands. Yes, I 100% know that my past has informed how I'm currently seeing, hearing, speaking, perceiving, digesting, and working with the world around me at large, right? And I'm not going to just tell it it's wrong, because it's not wrong. Whatever I figured out back then was how I needed to, that's what I had available to me. And when I look at the teenage years of me after the coma, when I didn't have a clue what human was or anything, that was a hot mess. I look at my 20s, that was a hot mess. 30s, I'm like, ooh, she's starting to get a little grounded, and bringing that in. And now in my 40s, I'm like, okay, all right, girl, we got something going on now. But excuse me, each one of those versions of me, all across the one, I send love to them. I really honor them. And I trust that that was the best choice for them. And now it's not the best choice for me now, and it doesn't match what I want it to be into the future. There's some amazing, beautiful gems from that time frame of my life that I can pull forward. The rest of it, we're going to let go. So personally, I never bully the system. I never force a change into it. I don't believe it's sound or kind. And personally, I think it's unethical and abusive. And it's what created the wounds for us in the first place. So yes, we're going to be finding and honoring those wounded parts of us, those protectors that came to our rescue from within us at that time, those belief systems that might have made us contract a little bit or come in with a new persona. We're going to honor them, and we're going to ask them to let it go. We're going to ask them to come in from the cold, because they're frozen pieces of us that are spliced out all over our timeline. And we don't have to find them all at one time. I firmly believe that we find them when we're supposed to find them, hence not forcing the system. Like, I want to work smarter, not harder. Like, I don't want to just be constantly looking for it, because then that abandons my current life to my past. So it's a yes and. And with this 3-step framework process, it really allows us to let our attention be guided to the part of us that is looking to be worked with, supported, held, release its pain so it can come home, and therefore free up more of our wholeness of who we truly be. right? And then that allows us to begin to say healing is not about making ourselves whole again. It's saying we're already whole. We just need to remember that wholeness is there. We just need to help that frozen piece of us come in. And when we do that, we inherently see ourselves as empowered. We inherently see ourselves in that beautiful medicine woman's prayer, which says, in essence, that I will not heal you because I do not see you as broken, right? I see you as whole. And I won't do it for you because I know that you have the ability within you to do it. And so it's my job to come alongside as that beautiful coach and companion and guide and be with you and support you as you remember your wholeness, right? And I believe that in our own self-work, like that's what we can bring in. And so having someone there with you, like me as a professional in there, that space with you, holding that space with you, beautiful. But you can also do it for yourself too. And that's what Soulful Practices is about as well. So I believe that the divine soul, source, universe, whatever you want to call it wants us to remember that we are worthy no matter what. And it wants us to remember that in that worthiness, love is also available to us no matter what. And then we are asking us to engage in our own self-work practices and our healing and our growth practices from the same place. That we can tend to those hurt parts of us, we can bring forgiveness in, and we can also awaken to the parts of us that are ready to move and move forward. Like the quote says, begin again. So this is really the core of my why of what I offer here in Soulful Practices, and then all the other programs that I offer at Unbridled Change, really helping us unbridle ourselves from the separation, the restrictions, the old ways of being that at once served us but no longer serve us now, right? And so that we can really free ourselves up to co-create a life that we want to fully engage with, that we feel matches us. So much of the time we're like, this isn't my life. And it's because the life that was created from it was created from those personas, from those masks, from those false selves. And so like we get to explore and play and say, okay, well, what do I want to create within my life? What do I want to have more of? This is what I love about it. This is what I want to shift and change and call in, right? And empower and be there. And when we do this, true empowerment always is for the other too. Because when we empower ourselves, we are no longer threatened by the joy, the happiness, the laughter, the love of those around us, right? We want to help empower them in their freedom, their love, their joy, their healing. And to me, this is why this work is not selfish at all. It is healing not only for you, but it's healing from the whole. So to help prime the pump for the rest of this season and exploring more of the pocket teachers that are going to help us open and attune to the healing power of love and compassion as our main fuel source, right? That's what we're going to use to rocket us out there into courageously connecting with our life and ourselves and who we truly be, that we're going to use that instead of anger and resentment and bitterness. And there's one last exploration that I want to bring in and pepper in there for one more foundational thing to kind of really set us up for the rest of this season. And that's, what are your different associations with the words love and compassion? And you can even put in the word forgiveness in here, because these are huge buzzwords in almost every conversation that is out there right now. And if I don't care which camp you're coming from, the mental health camp, the personal growth and development camp, the spiritual awakening camp, the career camp, like the financial camp, like every single one of those different wedges of life, so to speak, on that life wheel that every good coach is going to have you look at, right? You can find people talking about these words, love, compassion, forgiveness, and bringing it in. And they are really important now, personally and collectively. Like we need all of this soul medicine that we can get to really help bring forward as much healing and love and remembering our wholeness and opening to working together and releasing the division. We need this medicine. And yet, there, with these popularity of these words and these buzzwords that people use all the time, when I lovingly smile at my clients and I say, hey, can you share with me a bit more? Because I want to make sure we're talking about the same thing, because what it means to me and what it means to you, might not be the same thing. Can you share with me what love is, what compassion is, what forgiveness is? How do you engage with these concepts, these medicines of the soul in your life? How do you see them engaged if you were just observing, looking from the outside at two other beings working with these ones? Like, what does it feel like in my body to be working with love and compassion and forgiveness? And this is typically where I get a lot of, well, you know what I mean, Michelle. I mean, it's like this. And yeah, it feels good. It feels warm. It feels open. You know what it is. And I go, well, I know what it is for me, but can you help share that with what it is for you? So that's one of the things that I would really like to invite us into to kind of exploring here during this time. You can do it with me. You can do it on your own practices. But if it feels good to you, we really want to lean into it because chances are when you lean into it, what we're covering up with the, well, you know what it is. What we're covering up with that really quick response is that it's actually a landmine of messy versions of these medicines and protections and fears and worries interwoven, and yes, resentments and bitterness and feelings of hurt and disillusionment and disappointment in these words. It's all mixed in there together. And one of the things we would be optimal for us to work on right now is kind of starting to comb these out so that we can be willing within our body to actually lean into these over the next few episodes, right? So this might be a great place to pause if you don't have a journal with you, or you can think about it if you're in the car or walking right now, wherever you're at. Just don't close your eyes if you're doing one of those activities. But to write these down and some of the bullet points that you come up with. And it's for two reasons. At the end of the season, I'm going to invite you to kind of come back here, right? And to see, because 3 months from now, like we said, change happens incrementally. And so it really is a way to honor the work that you've done, because sometimes we don't feel it. We don't feel it until we have one of those earth was flat, earth was round moments. And so journaling and what's called a healing in a journey is really beautiful and supportive. And I know everyone says, ugh, I'm not a journaler. You can do it in bullet points. You could do it in little like scribbles on the side of something, like it just can be quick and easy. It doesn't have to be paragraphs, but just something that helps you be, again, little checkpoints to you. And the way that we're going to run through this practice of what is your association with these words is through another formula framework that I have for helping us engage in self-work, because it's wiggly wonkily in here. Like once we start to open up to that, pull that curtain back on our system, there's a lot in here. And so if we can have a framework of how we chat with the system, then we can have a starting point, a point of entry, and we can always break free from it and just go straight in. But it helps us get past that first sabotaging thing of, I don't know where to begin again, right? And so I call it the 4 aspects of us check-in. And it's the body, the mind, the heart, and the soul. And I call these 4 lovely little beings, our body being, our mental being, our heart being, and our soul being. And I use the word beings on purpose because when we usually talk about our mind, our mental center, or our ego, or we're disembodying it. We are taking away any sentience that it has, the wisdom, the inherent wisdom in our body, right? When we just call it just the body mind, it's not connected to us. But if we say it's our body being, now it's connected to a part of me, and it has its own beautiful, unique sentience and ways in which it can help support me, be a sacred messenger for me. The same with the mind. The mind is not the problem. It is not the issue. We don't want to not have a mind. As a person who woke up from a coma without any mind, any sense of self, that's a bad news bears. It's not that great. We need a healthy sense of self. We need an ego that is willing to work with our heart and our soul, right? Because the reason why that 20s was a hot mess is because there was no mind. And I was like working like a toddler trying to figure it out, right? In that same frame and like what was happening because it just wasn't there. And so we need that. And I'll go down a rabbit hole with that. So I'll stop myself there. I'll rein myself back in on that one. And our heart, right? Our heart is both that personal wants, wishes, and desires. And then it allows us to sense. It invites us into feeling and sensing and seeing things more symbolically and metaphorically than literally, like our mind does. So it opens us up. It starts to like go from stuck, stagnant, black and white, dualistic points of view to having more and more shades to color with and to work with and to see and perceive. And then that opens us up to our soul, right? That is there wanting to support us, really see beyond where we can get stuck, even personally, survivally and personal ones, right? And get us a little bit beyond that, open up the aperture so we can see more perspectives, hear more ideas, and actually put something new into what would be otherwise a very closed system, right? And so this is the 4 aspects check-in. It's a beautiful way to walk yourself through the system, ground yourself in what is my body feeling right now, not trying to change it, label it, say it's good, it's bad, it's anything. It's very much housed in somatic way of working with our system because I am a somatic therapist, like she's trained and works with that through the part system and bringing that in. And so really allowing ourselves to feel that and put that in there. And then saying from there, okay, what is my mind doing with this? What are the different parts of me, the protectives, my thoughts about this? And even you could go a little bit into feelings here because feelings are the messengers that go from place to place to place, bringing information to and from. And so it might be connected to a sensation that you're having in your system, but it might not be, right? And we're just going to hold it, gathering information. And then we open up to our heartbeat. What am I sensing, seeing, feeling, hearing within my heart? This is maybe where you get images. This might be where you get a saying or an idea. You might see a piece of you from your timeline, right? And then taking a nice deep breath in and opening up even wider with that aperture and saying, okay, now what is here from my soul being? What does my soul invite me to feel or to explore with what it is that I'm sensing, right? And so what I invite you to do is to think of that word love. In the interest of the recording, I'm going to kind of lump these together, but you really might want to go back and do just love, just compassion, just forgiveness. And if you feel into that, what do you feel happening in and around your body with the word compassion? You might have a part of you that has a longing coming from your heart, like, oh, I want that. I feel like I give that to everybody else, and then it doesn't have something for myself. You might feel like a part of you has started to shrink back, even as I'm saying these words, while there's this part that wants to come forward and say, yes, I want more of that, or I love that. You might have a part of you that's shrinking, collapsing, maybe even folding your arms. Maybe a little brow of your forehead is getting furrowed, right? Maybe there's a tightening in the chest or a gurgling in the gut. Check into your toes. Are they flat? Are they curled? You can wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. And the wiggle is important. It resets the vagal nerve. There's a whole thing of science behind that. I can geek out on that, but I'm going to try to restrain myself again and bring yourself in. And what's happening in the body with the word forgiveness? In or around the body? What is coming forward with that? And then how do you feel towards that word forgiveness? What pops up in the mind? I like to see there are protectors, my symbolism for my intuitive like sight, and everybody has their own, is just little bobbleheads. So if you hear me say little bobbleheads, that's my symbolism. I encourage you to find your symbolism of how you see these different aspects of you. So let's little thought bubble above, like if I feel a tightening in my heart, if I give it a little thought bubble, what would it be saying? Then what are you sensing with the heart? With that word forgiveness? And again, it can be a mixed bag. We are more than one thing. You can have different things. You can have parts of you that are excited, parts of you that are neutral, parts of you that are scared. It can be all of it. We're just writing them down, little words. Maybe there's a little voice in the back of your head that says, I love these words. I want these words, but dot, dot, dot. I get hurt. They expose me to pain. They happen for other people, but not for me. That would be in that mental body, right? Or maybe even talking to a wounded part from the heart. Perhaps you're getting like a whole image of what you would like. Somebody sitting down next to a little wounded part, or somebody who's struggling and putting a hand on their shoulders and saying, hey, just breathe with me with this. Share with me what's happening. What's going on inside there? Let me just be with you. There's no right, there's no wrong. And it just feels open. That'd be your soul coming forward to say, hey, I'm here. I'm with you. Share with me. Right? What we want to share are both the parts that maybe are hurting or the parts that are really excited, but a little nervous. What's happening within this system physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually? What wants love and support, and what might be stuck kind of looking maybe for more shadow pity, or stuck in some judgments, or even collapse and hopelessness. Just take a nice deep breath in, out, wiggle, wiggle, wiggle. So again, throughout this season, and you can always come back here, pause it, slow it down, rewind, whatever you want to do. Like throughout this season, we will be exploring this more. So we're just trying to get the lay of the land, like a snapshot, so to speak, of how we're entering this conversation that we're going to be having, this beautiful, soulful conversation. And we're going to be exploring this through many different quotes and wisdom teachings that can really help us develop more and more trust, comfort, and ultimately willingness to connect in with the essence of love in our body, the essence of love in movement, and what I call clean compassion. And I have a whole spiel about clean compassion that maybe we'll get to, that I teach in other areas, but I'll try to give it to you in the condensed version. And it's also like a whole chapter in the upcoming book, right? That really can invite us in to these beautiful, clean ways of working with these energies instead of the often conditional, messy versions of love and forgiveness and compassion that many of us have unfortunately interacted with in our lifetime, right? So each new quote is really designed to engage us with what this pocket teacher is bringing forward of no matter how difficult the past, we can always begin again, by Jack Kornfield, right? So back to that how. So now that we kind of have an idea of where we're going, the how, the last piece, this one's a little bit longer because it's setting up a whole season, but the last piece that we're going to explore and we're going to move into our practice for the week with is the how to begin again, right? And so when we really lean into no matter what past choices, experiences, and difficulties we have had or been through, that each moment we have an opportunity to, no matter how small, and we believe in the power of the mustard seed, right? To move the mountain, that no matter how small that is, that we can really truly start to create a new cause and effect, break free from the old karmic weights and burdens, and step into a new version of manifestation with ourselves, with our lives, with whatever goal it is that we're up to, right? It takes new questions. Again, like when I talked about that system of our four bodies, it's closed. If we're just going with our body, it's our biology is a reflection of our biography, is what Carolyn Mace teaches. And she is a mystic and a teacher in the intuitive healing arts field and also in the spiritual development field. And I really, truly, as an energy worker and practitioner, that's true, right? Like when I feel into someone's shoulder, I'm not just feeling their mechanics of their shoulder and what it can do on paper, I'm feeling into their responsibilities, their weights, their fears, their burdens that are working with them, right? The ways in which they feel like they cannot let something go, that they are stuck, hung with these things and available to them, and they can't put them down, right? So that's very much in there. And so to bring something new in, our mind only works on what's already in there. It just regurgitates the same things, projects into the future off of experiences of the past, and that's just the way the mind works. It's the heart and the soul that can bring in new questions. And that's the secret sauce. That's what allows us to bring something new into a very karmic, this is the way the ball is rolling, this is what we're doing, right? And we want to let all that go. So to get beyond that closed system of the mind and even the body, we want to open up to new questions. Questions are the magic carpet ride for our system, right? And the questions are, what will bring me balance right now? That's a beautiful question to ask ourselves at any moment where we feel ourselves out of balance, right? What would bring me more freedom of choice right now? So when we feel, and we do that check-in in our body being, and we feel restriction, we feel something clamped on us, we feel something depressing us, pressing us down, right? What would bring me more freedom into my body, into my movement? If my mind feels disillusioned and disappointed and it's stuck in a story, this can happen for others, but not for me. What's one choice that will start to shift that and bring me into more freedom of my thoughts right now, right? What's one action, one doing thing I love to do that will help to bring me more comfort and support and the light right now? So if I'm seeking and feeling I want support and I have a habit that like gives me that support, but it's destructive to me, can I pause and say, what's one thing in the light that would bring me support right now? Hand over heart, maybe take a breath. Maybe go outside, put my feet, in a sunny spot so that it feels good. Maybe it's to call and text a friend. Maybe it's to, take a little walk with my animal companions. Whatever it is, listen to a song that supports a new thought and thing. Whatever that is that might just bring you one step closer, just a little one, maybe big, but we're going for just a little. If we get more than that, that's like a cookie from the universe and I go, wow, high five, right? What's one action that I can take right now that will set me up for something that's in greater alignment with who I feel I am, what I feel my heart and my soul guiding me to, and honoring the old way that I don't want to keep feeding anymore, right? So what will bring me joy right now? What will help me cultivate greater joy right now, in this moment, and in the future? Those are all beautiful questions. You can mix and match, pick whichever one you want that feels good to you, that you want to bring into the practice this week. Because these are like the list of the basics of empowering and liberating questions. I'm sure you can come up, maybe that's one of your things, like this week. Just work on like, what are some of the questions I can ask myself when I realize I'm in a closed circuit and I'm just spinning and in muddy, murky water within myself, running the same pathways over and over and over. And we all know the definition of insanity, doing the same thing over and over and over and expecting different results. Is like we have to pause and bring something new in. And the way that we can do that is by questions, because questions engage us. And they allow us to, one, find the part that maybe struggles with that question, and then two, find the part that's like, yeah, I got this. I actually have something in here, right? And that can come from our heart and our soul. So they're what help us bring in new choices. And for our main soulful practices this week, I'd love to invite you to explore how your system feels towards the idea of beginning again. Even if we've experienced loss, difficulties, harm, illness that we feel has caused us to get off track, separated us with that ocean of in between us in some way, does it believe that we can begin again? Is it open to these soul-led questions, that we can ask that will try to bring us into a new dialogue, a new conversation that, yes, is going to feel a little scary, weird, clunky. Whenever we're doing something new, it's not smooth and polished and amazing. Every once in a while we channel it, and so we go in there, we're like, whoa, we hit that out of the park. But other times we're like, yeah, that was a try. And both of them and all the in between are totally fine. So, are we willing to not be perfect and let each day serve as the beautiful practice field that it is? Like trying to honor those new options, course corrections that we're making, the pauses, the clunkiness, as we create a new seamless rhythm, a new way of being that's attuned and in alignment with who we truly are. And so that's the practice for this week. So I'll bring it in again, just in a way for you to kind of put your pencils down. I have this part written in the show notes. So just take a moment, wiggle, stretch. I love to place a hand over my heart when I first start kind of stepping into these. That's just, what do I sense and feel in my body with the idea of I'm willing to let go of past difficulties and begin again? What sensations do I feel in and around my body being with that? Just take a few moments. So it might be again, like for me, my body is leaning towards it, but like in a good way. I'm like, oh, yes, I want that. But I can feel a little hitch in both of my hips. Like the upper part of my body is going forward and my hips are kind of going backwards. I'm like, that's interesting. I don't know if that's me or for the collective, for you. Right? And so now I'm going to get curious. I feel the sensation. And so now I'm just going to get curious. What emotions, what thoughts are present with those sensations? If there was a little thought bubble over the movement of the upper body, but the lower body holding itself back, what's it trying to show me, say, and feel? Could be that push me, pull me, right? And so what is present in your heart with this invitation? Again, if I'm moving too fast, just pause me and unpause me. That no matter what has happened in my past, I can both honor that and I can find a way to begin again. I'm not just telling my system to get over it, suck it up, buttercup, bygones are bygones. I'm honoring that I might have to do some repair work, and I'm also honoring that I can move forward. Yes, and I can move towards creating what I want to experience more of, how I want to express myself to myself and to others, and express with my life. What's the heart coming in? And then if you feel into inviting, almost opening up even more, calling in that wise one self, as I like to call it, and team, that soul being. Ask, what different aspects and parts of me that I found, what would help them? What would help me lean in a little bit more and see what else is there? And if it feels good to you, I invite you to open to this beautiful Reiki energy. This orb of light that's coming from within you. The way I work with Reiki is I never push energy. It's a part of a life force energy that's within all of us. So I'm just calling our attention to it and setting that intention to open to your life force energy. So this orb is coming from you. It's in your beautiful aura, connected to your divine nature and essence. So it's there to support you. Just feel that, however that works for you. And we're asking for this beautiful Reiki orb to support in softening the grip, the attachments that we might have to the fears and the worries and even the anger or rage of these different parts of us you might have found in that 4-aspect check-in, right? That's behind the emotions, so that we can tend to those directly and asking Reiki energy to start to come to those and be with it. It might be in your physical, emotional, mental, spiritual. And then also inviting that beautiful Reiki energy to help your system remember its wholeness, to like awaken, to vibrate with those soul medicines of acceptance, love, compassion, and yes, forgiveness. Really allowing those healing strands of grace to kind of move in and through your whole body being. You can direct it like a paintbrush, like, oh, my elbows, I've realized that I've been holding them. I want to shake them out. I need some love to them, or to the hips, to the knees, everything in between. And inviting these beautiful healing strands of grace both to help soften and to infuse, to be with you and to go on out into your timeline. So it goes, the timeline is not just past, it's much bigger. So we just let it come out into that timeline, adjusting wherever it needs to, supporting and unwinding. And then we also ask for this energy to be with you throughout this week. And if it feels good to you, just setting that intention that as we go throughout this week to cultivate more willingness with releasing that grip on our past difficulties so that we can open to beginning again with the medicines of love, compassion, and forgiveness guiding our way. Asking for this beautiful Reiki light to guide our attention this week, noticing the areas in which I might be withholding myself from making new choices because I'm judging or punishing myself after an old choice, believing that I might have missed an opportunity and therefore I'm just fated to this new pathway and I don't have the opportunity to begin again in another form. So I want to be aware of those moments so I can lovingly challenge them. Or telling myself that I could never create something, like somebody else can do that, but that's not for me, right? That I might feel that in my heart, but that's not possible for me. That's a restriction, and we want to lean into that and lovingly challenge that too and ask that, is that true? So when we find these different things with our awareness, I'm asking for this Reiki energy to help direct and my flow of thoughts so that I engage with the soul medicines of self-love and compassion, to seek understanding of why I might be restricting myself from those past difficulties. That's the love and the compassion. And then the courage to, and the self-love and compassion as well, to seek and unbridle my ability to begin again, to make courageous new choices, new ways of seeing, perceiving, and engaging the world around me. And so it is. Peace, peace, peace. So this is going to be my soulful practice for the next week. I hope you join me to begin to be aware of those hidden ways in which we might be holding ourselves back from new opportunities and deeper connections and choices that really allow me to simply begin again. Every time I realize this is a little bit of an ingredient I don't really want to put into my life, right? And so we can simply begin again. I truly believe and know that our soul and the divine deeply love us and are trying to help us find our way from feeling lost in separation, inner division, dis-ease, to experiencing more and more inner trust, love, wellness, and wholeness, right? So until next time, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey, Michelle Holling-Brooks. Thank you for listening to Soulful Practices. For more information on how to work directly with me or one of my guests, check out the show notes below. We'd love for you to also let us know what parts of this episode are speaking to you and how this practice is supporting you on your healing and spiritual journey. Please share this podcast with fellow seekers, travelers. Together, we can create a wave of soul-led beings in this world, offering you light, love, and joy on your journey. Michelle Holling-Brooks. Until next time.